use our little spade bit here to drill the hole for the eyes. And then once they're glued in, we'll file those down, and then we'll start finishing the shape of our throat. So let's see what we have here. So originally I marked out this little ledge here at about 1 millimeter, and I'm going to make this now about 7/10. Just mark that on both sides. And I'm going to take just 3 pieces of this paper towel, and I'm going to fold it into thirds, and I'm going to nest the frog on this paper towel. And the reason I'm doing that is if I just did it like this and I press down it, I have a chance that I can break the glue joint for the underslide, so really don't want to do that. So we got it set up on this, and so I'm going to take my little plane here and just plane right down to that line. I can be more accurate with this plane than I can with my gouge.
Where did you get this plane?
This is just a finger plane that I use for violin making. It's just I think it's from Gaywa or Getz, one of the two. So thin this area down a little bit. The way the sides of a frog are shaped can be very personal to a maker. Sometimes you see they're very angled in towards the throat. They're narrower here than it is here. Some people like their frogs a little flatter or really hollowed out, so just something to look at as you look at bows here in the future.
Is there anything you should avoid when shaping your frog?
Well, I definitely would not make them too narrow. The sides too hollow. Your thumb projection, so this part, you want there to be enough material in that it remains strong. Ebony does bend over the years for sure. I mean, anybody who's done violin work has seen fingerboards that have changed their shape, so you'd rather avoid that. Okay, I can make it a little bit narrower. My goal is probably about 7.5 millimeters here. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the file. So I'm holding my fingers over the end of the underslide, and that's just a way to keep from damaging these fine corners here. You want these to be super crisp when it's all done. So I'm going to file away here. Do the same thing here. And then you can see I leave this little bit of a flat up here closer to the underslide, and we'll deal with that here in a little bit. Again, using my thumb as a stop so I don't bang into that underslide. Same thing over here. A little harder to do.
So is this going to be the final width of the?
Yeah, so this surface is basically getting down to the final shape and the thickness. So getting close to being done here. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and mark out our eye placement. So my, can you grab my blue pencil out of my jar there, please? So my distance from the depth of the throat to the back of the frog is 32 millimeters. Okay, and I want to put my eye in the middle of that 32. And then I also want to put the eye not quite in the middle of this distance here. So this frog height is, I think it was 20.5-ish. And I want to have the eye ever so slightly below the center line. It's fine if it's at the center. It starts to look funny if it's a little bit above the center line. So if I'm going to err, I'm going to err to the low side. So let's mark that out.
So you're measuring the height of just the ebony, right?
Just the ebony, not counting the silver. So just going to scratch a line here at 16 on both sides. And then I'll measure the height. So we're at 20.3, so I'm just going to put it right at 10. Come on. Okay. So I'm just slightly below center. And then I'll take my scribe. Yeah, on here. And find my lines here. Here we go. And put a good mark on both of those. There we go. So now we're ready to drill out the eye mortises. Okay, put that aside.
Tony, is 20.3 was the height of the ebony, not including the liner?
That's correct, not including the liner.
So what size bit are you using?
So my eye, that I like is 7 millimeters. It's pretty common size for Picot and Tourt. Tourt was a bit more standard in size, but kind of bobbed around between 6.5, 7, 7.5, something like that. So, all right. So we're gonna go ahead and cut this so it's about maybe just a little more than 1 millimeter deep at the top and the bottom. You want to have enough thickness of your eye at the hollow here. So, you know, of course, this depends on the material you're using too. You don't want to drill these holes too deep because then you get into the mortise, and that's not good. When you're making these bits, if you're going to do this with a bow drill, it's super important that you get this out of the way here. So when you're making this, you have a portion of your the little centerpiece that is still round, and so that way the top of it is just a little pyramid and it cuts its way into the wood, but then there's this round dowel that actually helps keep the bit from wandering. It wants to follow that area where there's no cutter at all. And made that mistake in the past. Don't ever want to do that again, because if your bit wanders as you're doing it, now you've got an egg-shaped hole, which is pretty hard to fit an eye to. So I don't think we've... Okay, so now we're going to... I made my eyes earlier. You saw me do that on the button, so if you want to see how I made the eye, you can go back to the video about the making the button. So I'm going to choose which of these eyes I think looks best for the player side. They're going to look super dark, so and then I'm going to take the frog apart before I glue it together, because sometimes that little probe will make a hole into the mortise, and if you don't realize it, when you put the eye in, you can actually glue your frog all together, which is kind of a disaster.
I've done it.
So, all right, so I'm going to put this one in the player side.
How do you orient your eyes?
So you want the eyes definitely have a range. If you can just see when I turn this, you can see where there's a spot where you start to lose the quality of the pearl, and then where it returns. So you want to get it into a spot where it looks the best. So.
And is that spot that faces up on the player side?
So yes, it would be like this. So it would look best when it's like this. So let's push this in, and you can use I have a little piece of wood that I use to press in the eye, so I'm not pushing it in too far. No, it's all right, I don't need it. These are plenty tall enough. So yeah, it's kind of a disaster if you push them in too far. Kind of hard to get them back out to fix that. Okay, so that one's in the way we want it. And I'm just going to use this thin CA and glue it in. So that glue, that's not coming out, I guarantee it. At this point, you'd have to break it up to get it out. I don't wipe away the extra glue. I like to have a fillet of glue. so that when I file down the eye, I don't end up having the edges break down. Some pearl and abalone are far more prone to doing that. So just a good way to avoid it. Okay, so this eye, it's up to you how you want to orient it. Do you want it to look good when so you're looking at the bow this way, head's out here, you flip it over, do you want it to look good like this? Or do you want it to look good like this? So that's just a personal question. I kind of people are going to look at a bow like this and maybe they'll turn it like this. Rarely do people turn the bow over this way and then look at the frog this way. So, find my orientation. Okay. These eyes are on the thick side here. Press those in. Okay. Let's see here. Make sure it's all the way down. Okay. Got the glue on there. And I think I'm going to get my accelerator out just to speed it up a little bit. Okay, slide back in. The ferrule's on. So now I can go ahead and file the eyes down. And you want to take your time with this. If you use a lot of pressure, you can crack the pearl, or it'll actually flake. So that's not a good thing.
Better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, good, because it's better for me too.
And the thing about pearl is you never know what it's going to look like once you get it filed down. It may be absolutely stunning, and then 3 swipes with a file and you went, oh, where did all that beauty go? So this one actually is pretty nice. So it's got a nice look to it.
Can you tip it towards us a little bit?
Yeah.
There you go.
Pretty nice. Let's see what this one's going to tell us.
And this is that abalone from David Werther,
Yeah,
right?
this is the what do they call it? Super abalone. When you get it, it's jet black. You really don't know what you have in it until you sand it down.
Tyler said he just ordered some.
Well, the colors are going to blow your mind, so be prepared. Wow, that one's really interesting too. Okay. Yeah, let me show you some of these things here. So they almost look like they're made out of graphite. And let's see. Find something here. I can sand this one down, see what it looks like. So you got to sand it down a bit more, but the colors are way more enhanced than they are just normally. Okay, so we got our eyes filed down. So now we're going to start refining the shape of our throat and doing our chamfers. We're going to do 3 chamfers here. You want to use super sharp knife. And again, this is something that, you know, this is sort of your personal taste thing here, how you're going to make this shape. Okay.
Oh yeah, that angle's way better. Kind of looking at it from the, yeah.
Don't know what you're referring to.
I moved the camera so we could kind of see it from the side.
Okay. So you can look at this angle, and you can look down here in the throat, and you kind of see which direction your chamfers are going. You want to be careful not to dig down into this area below the ferrule, unless that's your intention. Some makers that's their style, but beware, don't go too far. Okay, and then you want to see this again. This is another one of those tombstone shapes. You don't want it too pinched, and you don't want it too short. Right now, this is about 4.6 millimeters from the bottom facet to the top. That's probably a pretty modest height. This light's a little bit of a challenge to work with. I usually have my bench lights up, but they would be in the way. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and do the chamfer on the inside here. Kind of hard to describe what these look like because they change their width as they get closer to the ferrule. They get wider. I want my throat to not be sort of pointed here in the center.
So technically you're kind of starting with the second facet.
I'm starting with the middle facet, yes. And then I'm doing an inner and an outer facet. And hopefully these are, this is going to be my sort of the final depth on my on that first facet. But if it's not, I can, you can always change it. Okay. Now let's go ahead and do a little flaw here. So let's do the outer chamfer. Okay, so I think I've got that the way I want it. A little deeper here maybe. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and blend all three of them together. Start in the middle. A little bit like we did with the bow, we had it 8-sided, now we're going to make it 16-sided, sort of that same idea. Sometimes it's kind of hard to see. You get in this where you're trying to just take off a super feather shaving, and it's so wide that it'll dig in a little, so you got to be careful. If you need to use a file, use a file. Okay, over to this side. Okay, getting down here.
More and more. I'm sorry, you have the wrong number. No, you're not. Stephen Johnson at Ashland University, if you're watching, that was for you.
Yeah. Okay. Getting down just pretty much the way I want it. Part of the challenge here is you want your transition from this surface then to dive into the throat. You want this to look deliberate. It can't look like it's two different things. You don't want a point where it's obvious where it stops being part of the concave side and then it goes into the throat. But then you don't want just sort of this mushy look either. So you have to be aware of that. You know how you're going to do that. So, and then now here's a good time to look at the shape of your throat and see if you want to refine it at all. Sometimes it's really hard to see it until it's really down to that really sort of thin, you know, that you've taken away the thickness of the center ridge. So I think I'm going to go with that. Okay, so now I'm going to take my file and I'm going to file away the, I made that little line there, so I'm going to file that away so it matches the curve of the ferrule. And I think almost every maker has a different way of dealing with this transition from this, especially in this area right here. Some are really kind of hollowed out there. It's sort of an interesting exercise looking at how different makers do that. It's always nice if it looks symmetrical too from one side to the other. Okay, so I've got that. Now I'm going to, I left that little flat there, so now I'm just going to try to obliterate that line between the flat and the rounded area. Being mindful not to fall off and damage the underslide or press on it too much. You don't want to file away any more of the silver either because that's already been taken down to size. Okay, looks good. Change this a little bit with a knife. I know some makers go ahead and once they fit the ferrule and get the height and the length and everything done, then they'll go ahead and finish shaping this throat. But for me, every time if I would make it that way and I would finish the eye, then I'd still have to deal with this area here anyways. So I figure I might as well just wait and and do it once, and that's it. So now I'm going to take the frog apart.
Some makers finish their frogs on a stick.
Yep, some have the frog mounted to the stick to do the shaping, and I've done that before. So now I'm going to take my thin CA glue, and I'm going to size this whole frog with it. And I'm hoping that if I have any open pores that are going to be sort of prominent, this has almost no pores in it, so I'd be surprised if there was anything. But I don't think it's a bad thing to fill all these pores, any pores that might be there, so that I've got a frog here I'm working on right now. It's an old FN Voran frog, and previous owner has just sweated on this poor thing so much that the pores are all full of white, like concrete kind of material. It's kind of gross looking.
Is there anything you can do to fix that?
So it's really hard to. You can dye it. That's about all you can do.
Is that all hand cheese?
Yeah.
Ew.
It's gross. It's dirt.
So filling all those pores will help prevent that.
Maybe keep the moisture out of it. It certainly makes the frog look better when you're all done with it. So, but we're going to sand it all off. There won't be any left on the wood. It'll all be gone. Okay, ferrule's back together. So now it's time to start sanding. So I take one piece of 400 and one piece of 2000, and I'm going to take and roll it up around the just my end of my needle file here. And I'm going to put the two together. So it's nice and rigid. Back up on my block here. So now I'm going to start sanding this. And oops. So I'm holding this in a way that I'm applying pressure on my index finger, and I'm aware of not rounding this back edge here. So, and I'm only going to sand this until I've got my file marks and my glue gone. So we've already done our job getting it shaped. I forgot to do one thing here. So I'm going to take my ferrule back off and take a number 4 file and file this flat or smooth, whichever the right word is.
Why?
Well, anytime you bend a piece of metal, it gets a hollow in it lengthwise, or so you want to get that so that it's nice and flattened out. It'll just look better. Plus, it's an opportunity to take away any knife marks or or file marks from the zero cut file. All right. Put it back together. So now I can start to file the silver and the ebony here together.
Brevelo asked, what kind of radius do you start with on the design block when shaping ferrules for violin, violoncello?
I couldn't tell you exactly. We can measure it here in a minute. So if you've ever watched any videos or done it yourself of the way that when somebody's making a car or a boat and they are trying to what they call fair, meaning they've got the shape and they would put filler on it and then they would sand it out. So they would use a really long sandpaper block to reshape that. That's essentially what I'm doing with this, is I'm using this as almost like a bar. So I'm going around different ways to try to mush all of these curves together. I'm going to roll it in this way and then another direction. Top of the ferrule here. Okay, so now I'm going to take a piece of paper towel and put some alcohol on it, and I'm going to wipe off all of the dust, and I'm going to watch and see where as it dries, you'll be able to see scratches from the file, or if you've left a little patch of the CA glue, and you probably can't see it, but I still have some file marks right there. So I'll go back and get this. It's always a pain to move to the next paper and or even get all the way to polishing it, and then, oh darn, there's a file mark. So try not to have to go in backwards at all. See how that's going? Looks pretty good. Maybe there's a little bit right up here. There are 0 open pores on this. There weren't really any to speak of before, but they're definitely not now. Okay, move to the other side. Okay, looking pretty good. All right. See what this side looks like. It's got a little spot up here, still a little glue. Okay, look inside the throat here, see what's going on. Still a little shiny here in the right, very center ridge. Okay, you want to check again your throat, make sure it's the shape that you want it. It's the tiniest hump right in the middle of that thumb projection here. We'll see if that's enough to take care of it. Yep, we're good. Okay. So now we're going to switch over to the 2000 grit. All right. Now using alcohol as a lubricant. I know other makers that use like a lamp oil, a real volatile oil to as a lubricant.
Is there a benefit to one over the
No,
other?
I'm not a fan of the smell of lamp oil, I guess. So, man, that eye is really awful nice. And this 2000 grit's really more of a burnisher than it is a sandpaper. But you have to go through this step, otherwise it won't polish up as nicely. Get all the sandpaper marks out of the silver. You want to make sure that this line is, this transition from flat to the curve of the throat is the way you want it. That you, it's so easy to change it ever so slightly, even with this fine paper. Sometimes you have to go back and manipulate it just a little bit. There we go, that's good.
What are we gonna do with these what are we gonna do after all these live streams are over?
Yeah, we thought about what videos we could do. Certainly, if you have any suggestions, we'd love to hear them. I'm thinking about doing something on tools for bow making. Maybe different ways of soldering. Maybe even lathe and milling work for bow makers. Maybe even make some of those little spade bits. Show how that's done.
I need my own set of spade bits.
There you go. All right. I like it. Okay.
We're at 53 minutes.
Yeah, we're just gonna plow on. We're almost
Okay.
done here.
Awesome.
So we're gonna go ahead now. We're gonna finish these two surfaces.
Dennis Braun said spade bits would be awesome. Sarah said tool making videos would be really helpful indeed.
Yeah, I think we'll get some of that put together here soon. So I'm just taking, this is 400 grit sandpaper. Just getting this surface flat, and I'm not trying really hard to make this super flat. If you're pushing a little bit on one side then the other side and getting ever such a slight curve to that, there's no harm.
I mean, the old bows weren't flat.
The old bows are not even close to flat. Again,
Sean
you
said,
want to
please do all those videos.
you want to push the underslide on, not pull it off. So I'm going to want to file this or sand it in this direction. You want to take this down until you've gotten all that glue is gone. You're down to the wood. Okay. You can do the end of the ferrule this way too. So remember, I haven't cut the length of my thumb projection off yet. We're not there yet. Okay. So we got that done. We'll clean that up later. Just keep rolling along.
Charles asked if we could do a video on Baroque bows.
Yeah,
Or
we could
maybe
do
some
that.
Barocco
We
making.
could do that. Okay, so now we're gonna take the 2000 grit and some alcohol. And I'm sanding this at a bit more of an angle than the other way so I can tell if I've gotten rid of the scratches, gotten rid of the scratches. Does that pearl ebony look nice?
It's kind of hard to see. Let me see.
Anyways, we'll get to it. It's looking pretty nice from where I'm sitting. Okay. Make sure all my scratches are gone. Okay, do the heel plate. Okay. And then just a couple of shots here on the ferrule. Okay. So now we have razor sharp edges here, and we don't want to leave those. So I actually take my number 4 file, and I'm going to file on a chamfer. So I'd say that's in the neighborhood of a 1/2 millimeter, maybe. It's easier to file on the wood, so be a little bit careful. Try just to do the... You want this nice, super even line here. It looks great on the side if you do this right. So now I'm going to just round this off.
Tell him what Yoko says.
What did she say? If it bites, I can't play it. So
Yeah. She picks up the bow and she says, "Ouch."
yeah. Okay, now I'm going to use a number 6 file, and I'm going to round this back corner here. A little bit more. Okay, and then I take the number 6 and I just round that corner ever so slightly. Okay, and that's good. So now I'm going to round my ends of my ferrule. Six. Okay, and then go to the number 6 file and just polish that up a little bit. Number 6 doesn't do much cutting. It's more polishing than cutting. So now I have this really sharp edge here on the ferrule. So I'm going to take the number 6 and I'm going to put just the slightest bit of just sort of rocking the file back and forth. To my eye, if this is too flat looking, then it can look a little hollow. So I take just the slightest bit of that flatness or straightness away. Then I'm going to take the number 6 again, and I'm going to put just the tiniest bit of a chamfer here. And then I'm going to put around this top of the ferrule off a little bit, because that can definitely bite the hand too if it's too sharp. And it looks much better if it's that corner's eased a little bit. Okay, so that's all done. Make sure there's no burrs left on the underslide. You can just a lot of times just pull them off with your fingernail. Okay, next step is going to be cutting the ferrule or the thumb projection or thumb stop, whichever you want to call it, to length. So I like to take off about 1 millimeter-ish. It's not that important how accurate this is, especially if it's your own. You can call anything intentional if it's your own.
Is there anything wrong with leaving it the same length as your ferrule, or making it too short?
It looks really long when it's the same length as a ferrule, and sometimes, especially on a Sartori kind of model, for some reason, if it's the same length, it actually looks longer than the bottom of the frog. So if it's shortened just a little bit, it's just aesthetically more pleasing.
Can you make it too short?
Oh, probably, but you probably won't go that far. So, I'm going to go ahead and take my jeweler's saw and sawing down. And this is probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 degree angle-ish. Okay, I'm going through the bottom facet, and now I'm going to hold it on its side, and I'm going to drag the file or the saw backwards until I cut through the rest of the ebony, so I don't split out that little corner there. It's always fun. And then I'll finish cutting this. Okay, see the difference there? So now I'm going to take my file, and same idea here. You're trying to push this underslide on and not pulling it off. So,
and you want to make sure you avoid the ferrule while you're doing it.
Yeah, don't file the ferrule. You can, but you have to go back and fix it later. A little bit more. So, it's nice if this is perfectly straight across. Angle about the way I like it. You don't want to bend this angle a little bit too far forward, because that makes these corners really weak. Weak aesthetically and also physically weak. All right, let's go ahead and put a chamfer on here. Players really don't like a sharp thumb projection. So we have to be a little bit kind and take some down here. Okay. hit that with your sandpaper. Now I also take my scribe and I burnish this sharp corner here. Hit it pretty good. And that way, when you put it back on the stick, it's not going to gouge away at the stick. It's rounded off enough that it's going to want to slide over the top of the wood. And then the very last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my 2000 grit, and I'm just going to ease this edge ever so slightly. Just barely enough so that you can see it. That's it. And that just keeps it from feeling super sharp. Okay, time to polish. Get rid of some silver here.
So what are some of the different ways that you can polish a frog?
Well, I use, again, I have my leather here, the same thing I did with my ferrule, or with my button. I don't get too crazy trying to polish. I'm not trying to get rid of every single mark in the silver. It's, in a way, kind of a fool's errand, because the first time it gets to a shop and it gets rehaired, somebody's going to polish it up with something that's not as pure maybe as your polishing cloth. You don't want big old file marks in it, but I'm not chasing every single little mark in it. It looks pretty darn good from here. Again, push your underslide on. Don't pull it off.
So you're not using any sort of paste or anything when you polish your frogs?
I'm just using the Dialex Blue. I've used another product called Simichrome. It's a German product. It works extremely well, but it's pink. If you get it in a pour, it's there forever. Okay, I'm going to start polishing the side of the frog. Again, I have my thumb in the way, so I'm not going to slip off and damage the underslide. I'm going to need that dowel. This ebony has no pores in it, but it has just the faintest of brown streaks in it, which is not as attractive.
Will that go away with
this ebony, it does
sun?
tend to darken with time. All the blocks that I have that I've cut the size are all black again after a month or so. So it's going to look fine in the future, but I'm going to go ahead and just put some of that leather dye on to make it all nice and homogeneous. Okay, end of the ferrule, corners, thumb projection. This is an area that you see a lot of file marks on a lot of the old bows. Really coarse ones too. Okay, that's done. That's done. And then I have a dowel that I've tapered the end and wrapped this with leather, and this does a great job of reaching inside the throat, polishing this all up.
Do you think this is the best way to polish a frog that you might enter for competition?
Oh, you want it to be polished like it was glass, black glass. So you could also take a piece of that that polishing cloth and stick it in, cut a strip and go like this, and that would do a fine job cleaning this up too. All right. Now let's hit it with some leather dye. And this has a wax in it itself, so it does help leave a nice polish on it.
Now, why would you use leather dye instead of like ink?
Well, this is for polishing leather, so ink is not necessarily a polish, or it's not a polish.
Dennis Braun asked if you would use micro mesh.
I don't think I need to go any finer than this 2000 grit. It's a 3M product. Easy to get. It's inexpensive compared to micro mesh. So, and I just seem to burn it every time I use it. I end up like overheating it, and then now I've got a chunk in the middle of what I was trying to do that's not happy anymore. So we'll let that sit for a couple of minutes and dry a little bit. Let's take a look at our stick and see where we are with that. See, my bench is starting to look like it normally does with all this stuff in the way. So, I have to do a little excavating here. One thing you don't want, and that's silver getting its way into your polish. So try to avoid that. That's always bad. So get my hands off. Never fails, it always embeds itself in the side of the head, and you got to dig it out. Okay. Oh, that's looking really nice.
Dennis asked, how often do you recharge your rag with shellac?
I don't do it unless I feel like it's just not doing enough. But, maybe one time while I'm polishing a stick. All right, so, man, it's looking really nice. So we're gonna let this get hard overnight, and tomorrow when we come back, we're gonna go ahead and brand it and do a wrap and a thumb grip. And then we'll see if we have time. We'll go ahead and get it rehaired, get her done. So let's go ahead and take this leather dye off of the frog and see what we've got.
So you're just kind of burnishing it with a
Yeah,
little piece
just-
of towel?
Yep, that looks great. Yeah, that's fantastic. Alrighty, that'll do it for today. We'll go ahead and start working on finishing touches tomorrow.
Great. What time are we going to be back?
So let's start at noon Eastern Standard Time tomorrow.
All right.
Okay, we'll
Okay.
see you then.
Bye.